Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Welcome back to Islam Between the Lines. My name is Farooq. After a short break, we are back with this second series of 3 episodes on the topic of imperative of investment. This is the first episode of this series. In this series, we will be discussing spending both as a consumer and as an investor. The reason for using the name of investment only is this: what we spend as consumers is mostly compulsory and unavoidable. As such, no choices are involved. On the contrary, spending to invest is discretionary and we may or may not choose to invest. But as that discretion needs to be exercised in favor of spending, we have used the epithet of imperative with the investment in economic activities. It's more or less hard to make out if earning precedes or follows the spending. The two appear to use a course which is more cyclic than linear. So we have picked up spending first because of its comparative brevity. The topic of earning will have to include the subtopic of riba or usury as well. That topic will be taken up in the next series, inshallah. For the purposes of this series, we will be proceeding on the assumption that our earnings are by and large legitimate and lawful. So let's begin with the beginning. The Islamic design of employing wealth of the wealthy is to secure both peace and prosperity for the poor without, however, compromising the profitability for the former. Islam seeks to exploit our natural love for wealth to make us love the places where it wants us to invest our wealth. Someone's will to earn yield fruit only when someone else is willing to spend. One cannot earn if none else spends, and no one can spend if none else is there to earn. Spending and earning are two aspects of a bipartite phenomenon. For all our spending as a consumer and as an investor, we expect and deserve at least an adequate material return or dividend. There is no such expectation or entitlement in charity. Hence, the exclusion from our topic. In Islamic phrasing, the entire material holding of a man is his property or mal in Arabic. And the Quran candidly acclaims property as the support for life. Chapter 4, verse 5. This description, while maintaining that we can stand tall to will if we have the means to execute that will, also implies that the confidence due to the external wealth is not permanent. Unlike one's inner spiritual and intellectual worth, which are inseparable from his person, the wealth can be separately pilfered or destroyed, leaving the man penniless. This is a universal truth and not an allusion to any sort of Islamic materialism. Having and not having wealth at different stages of life is like alternation of the day and night. The Prophet's co-brother Az-Zubair has exemplified it by participating personally in every battle fought during his life, even as he was a banker of the highest liability in his time. Sahih Bukhari, chapter 57, Hadith number 38. Quran, chapter 28, verse 73, and chapter 78, verse 11, identifies the day with economic activity, which may nonetheless be extended into some hours of the night also. Chapter 16, verse 12. More importantly yet, it says that economic activity leads to prosperity, which in turn is conducive to being grateful. Chapter 16, verse 14. Chapter 28, verse 73. Chapter 30, verse 46. Chapter 35, verse 12. And chapter 45, verse 12. Economic activity is commercially beneficial to all the parties involved therein. This differentiates it from gambling and other wagering activities, in which one person gains only when the other person loses. For the same reason, pseudo economy is not permissible in Islam because it is only manipulative and devious. Real economy results in production of goods and services which are bought by the users for a price. Users' needs are the bedrock of the desire to earn. Although we do not fall sick because of them, yet the doctors do thrive on our sickness. Therefore, there is nothing wrong with that. Quran exhorts Muslims to desire, but without being reckless in fulfilling those desires. Chapter 7, verse 56. The rider of fearfulness is meant to prevent human desire from growing into the inhuman greed and not to thwart the economic activity. The importance of economic activity has been epitomized in verse 9 of chapter 62, which calls upon Muslims to quicken to the Friday congregations and halt their sales, and adds that that's better for them should they know. The demonstrative pronoun that obviously refers to the halting of sales and demonstrates an ultimate significance. It simply applies to the sellers who are the producers or the manufacturers. It does not apply to the traders who trade in others' goods, because trade is not used by Quran as a synonym of sale. Trading activities used by the Quran interchangeably with amusement have been rendered inferior to the original sales. Chapter 62, verse 11. A logical inference, therefore, is that an inert Muslim going to a Friday congregation with no selling activity to halt hardly qualifies for any goodness. In fact, verse 10 of the same chapter foretells his perdition as it entreats the Muslims to disperse in the land after the Friday prayers and seek God's bounty through their economic activities so that they prosper. In other words, a Muslim who does not have the beginning of the sales to halt for the Friday prayer and to resume them thereafter cannot have the end of the prosperity promised here. The Prophet has said that of the people, either he lives the best life for them who holds the reins of his horse ever ready to march in the way of Allah, flying on its back whenever he hears a fearful shriek or call for help, seeking death or murder where it is expected, or he who is with the flock on the top of hills or in the bottom of valleys, establishes prayer and gives zakat and worships his Lord until death comes to him. There is no better person than these. Sahih Muslim, chapter 33, hadith number 185, and Sunan Ibn Majah, chapter 36, hadith number 52. Applying this hadith to our age, the first mentioned defender would include our servicemen and policemen. The second performer is the entrepreneur, tending his flock here and there for sale. All others virtually don't matter for any count. The Apostle of Allah was once asked about the best earning, and he said, "A man's handiwork and all genuine sales." Mishkat Masabi, chapter 11, hadith number 25. A Bedouin once asked Allah's Apostle, peace be upon him, about immigration, and he said, "Woe to you! The matter of immigration is very hard. Do you have camels? Do you pay their zakat?" The man said, "Yes." The Prophet said, "So work beyond the seas, and Allah will not ignore any of your deeds." Sahih Bukhari, chapter 24, hadith number 55. Just ponder a bit. A shepherd is exhorted to work with his camels beyond the seas. There can be no better or bigger exhortation for promotion of economic activity spanning the globe or the continents. This is the prophetic interpretation of the Quranic phrase, disperse on earth, after Fridays. The Quranic injunction of dispersal around the earth, read with this prophetic exhortation for working overseas, show that Islam promotes exports and on global scale. Just exports only implies that the imports are not allowed. Surprisingly, this positive emphasis on manufacturing for worldwide sales is only a small aspect of Islamic economic activism. There is another negative form of emphasis which is far more severe and demanding. It's conveyed through a particular form of prohibition of riba. We will discuss that only when we discuss riba in detail later on, because an isolated mention of that prohibition here can be more misleading than guiding. The passing reference here is to underline that there is no substitute for economic activity in Islam. Allah's Apostle ﷺ has set up an exquisite example for us to start a business. A man from Ansar, that's a Madinite, once came to him and begged for alms. The Prophet said, "Do you have nothing in home?" He said, "Yes, I have a cloth, a part of which we wear and a part of which we spread, and a wooden bowl from which we drink water." The Prophet said, "Fetch them here." The man came with the same, and the Prophet took them and said, "Who buys these?" A man offered to take them for 1 dirham. The Prophet said, "Will anyone pay more than a dirham, two or three. Another man said that he will take them for 2 dirham. The Prophet gave these to him and took 2 dirham, which he gave to the Ansar, saying, buy some food with 1 dirham for your family, and with another, buy an axe and bring it to me. He brought an axe, and the Prophet fitted its handle with his hands and said to him, go, gather and sell firewood, and do not let me see you for a fortnight. The man went, gathered, and sold firewood, and when he returned, he had earned 10 dirhams, with which he had purchased garment and some food. The Prophet said, this is better for you than begging, which would spot your face on the day of judgment. Begging is allowable only for three people: one who is in extreme poverty, one who is awfully indebted, or one who is painfully liable for blood money. Sunan Abu Dawud, chapter 9, hadith number 86. So many lessons to draw from this small but inclusive event. Quran has compendiously summed up its entire idea of commerce in three brief phrases. O you who believe, devour not your properties among yourselves wrongfully, but let there be trade with mutual consent, nor kill yourselves. Verily, Allah has been merciful to you. Chapter 4, verse 29. The second part of commercial permissibility makes the necessary exception to the prohibition contained in the first part, and the third part contains a stern warning that the failure or omission to act commercially will be suicidal. In effect, therefore, commercial activity is not something optional, it is absolutely compulsory. Economic inertia is self destructive. We saw that Quran chapter 62, verse 9 recognizes only sales as the vocation of the first class Muslims, whom it commands to suspend the same for Friday congregations. Verse 275 of the second chapter positions sales opposite riba by saying that Allah has permitted sale and prohibited riba. So, sale and riba are quite dissimilar from each other. Sale is pure and riba is impure. Sale is permitted and promoted, riba is forbidden and avoided. Sale means selling one's goods that are grown, produced, or manufactured. It would also include providing various professional and skilled services. In that sense, teachers, doctors, engineers, lawyers, accountants, masons, mechanics, drivers, etc., all are sellers of their respective services. A sale is complete when a buyer buys a good or a service offered by the seller. The price paid by the buyer is also a sadaqah for him. So every sale involves a sadaqah too. Verse 276 of the second chapter of Quran declares that Allah blights the riba and increases the sadaqah. Naturally, the sellers stand to gain from the sales of the things, but Quran promises blessings for the buyers spending also. Therefore, both the sellers as well as the buyers are benefited from the sales of all good things and services. In short, we may generalize that sales are the secret of economic well being. Genuine sale means sale of one's own goods as differentiated from the sale of others' goods. The Apostle of Allah said, don't go to meet the caravan on their way for buying their goods, and a townsman should not sell for a desert dweller. The Islamic scholar Ibn Abbas said this means that a townsman should not become a broker for the desert dweller. Sahih Bukhari, chapter 34, hadith number 109. The sellers from other places should bring in their merchandise and sell it in the town, not necessarily in retail, though. They may sell in bulk to the local buyers, who in turn can sell as retailers. But both of them will be selling as owners, and neither will be selling as an agent of the other. The Prophet has also forbidden selling of foodstuff before receiving its possession. Ibn Abbas said that he did not consider everything to be sold, but similarly. Sahih Bukhari, chapter 34, hadith number 87. This prohibition has eliminated the middlemen who only add their margins on the merchandise without any positive contribution. Now, while instructing the Muslims to go to the other lands for business, Islam does not expect them to prevent the people of other lands from coming to the Muslim states. In fact, if Islam is absolutely against anything, it is the alienation. Interface with fellow beings is indispensable for peaceful coexistence, and commercial dealing is the most useful form of that interface. Nothing should be allowed to hinder this interface or interaction. The Prophet of Islam not only bought on credit some foodstuff from a Jewish merchant, he also left it unpaid during his life, to be repaid only after his death. As security, he had pledged his own personal armor. The credit was for a determined term. Sahih Bukhari, chapter 35, hadith number 13. And the Prophet died before expiration of that term. Sahih Bukhari, chapter 56, hadith number 129. To sum up, Muslims are persuaded to invest in various places, either as exporters thereto or as manufacturers therein. As a result of this activity, they shall not only wish peace to those places, but will also disallow their own governments to disturb the peace there. This is quite contrary to our present practice, in which peace is a condition precedent for any investment. A country in trouble is denied all investment for want of peace, when actually that is direly in need of the same. Our investors decry rescue places as unfavorable destinations for investment. But Allah's book denounces their foul narratives that they create to withhold investments. It says, woe to every scandal monger and backbiter who piles up wealth and keeps counting it, thinking that his wealth would make him immortal. Quran chapter 104, verses 1 to 3. In this way, Quran maintains that investment is necessary for peace and accordingly entreats Muslims to invest some of their wealth in foreign countries for their peace and prosperity. The second one of these three verses condemns stashing of wealth, inland or abroad. Islam commands Muslims to spend from what the good things they have legitimately earned and from what Allah has brought forth from the earth for them. Quran chapter 2, verse 267. So, for any spending to be appreciated by Allah, it should be from one's earnings that are substantially genuine and lawful. The implication of this rule is that every illegitimate earning actually belongs to some other person or persons, and a Muslim has no right to spend it. However, this condition appears to be more or less diluted for the purpose of cultivation, which interestingly is not linked to the legitimacy of possession of land. In other words, land must be utilized productively by the possessor as long as he possesses it, even though he might not be the lawful owner. The principle of legitimacy of wealth was beautifully applied by the Prophet during the famous event of concluding the Hudaybiyah Treaty. In the last month of the sixth year AH, corresponding to AD 628, the Prophet and his 1400 companions left for Mecca to perform the minor pilgrimage or Umrah. The Quraysh of Mecca, supported by many neighboring non-Muslim tribes, resolved to disallow this. Before this, they had fought 3 battles with Muslims and did not like so many Muslims to be in Mecca at a time. Muslims had traveled more than 500 miles from Medina, but they were stopped at a place called Hudaybiyah, that is just 15 miles from Mecca. Eventually, a 10-year peace treaty was concluded between Muslims and the Quraysh of Mecca. A senior diplomatic negotiator from the Quraysh was Urwa bin Masud. He was the person to persuade the Quraysh to consider seriously the Prophet's offer of peace. After a brief spar with Abu Bakr, Urwa kept on talking to the Prophet, and whenever he talked, he seized the Prophet's beard. Mughira bin Shuba was there, standing near the head of the Prophet, holding a sword and wearing a helmet. Whenever Urwa stretched his hand towards the Prophet's beard, Mughira would hit it with the handle of his sword and tell Urwa to remove his hand from the beard. Urwa raised his hand and asked, "Who is he?" They said that he is Al-Mughira bin Shuba. So he said to Mughira, "Oh, treacherous, am I not working on your treachery?" And added that during his ignorance, Mughira was accompanying his people, whom he has killed, and has taken their property. Then he came to Medina and embraced Islam. On this, the Prophet said to Mughira, As regards your Islam, I accept it. But as for the property, I do not take anything of it. Sahih Bukhari, chapter 54, hadith number 19. Here we conclude this first episode with my best wishes for improvement in the social media, which afford free global platforms to everyone without any fear or favor. Thanks for watching.